My mom laughed when I said I never felt heard, then planned an intervention to fix my attitude and told the family, "We've indulged this long enough." When I finally stood up for myself, she smirked and said, "There aren't supposed to be boundaries in family." I didn't say a word. That was 2 months ago. Today, she left a gift bag at my door, with a note that says, "Please come back." I knew the moment I opened my mouth, they were going to twist my words. That's what they do. Turn my truth into an attack, my feelings into drama, and my pain into overreaction. I come from a family where silence keeps the peace, where smiling through gritted teeth is considered maturity, and speaking up is treated like betrayal. So when I finally said something, really said something, it was like dropping a grenade in the living room. I felt invisible growing up. Invisible like at 10, when I told my mom I hated being teased at school, and she told me to toughen up. At 14, crying after my first breakup, while my dad laughed and said I was too sensitive. At 21, I finally saw a therapist, only to hear my mom call it a waste of money. The breaking point was at my cousin's birthday party. Everyone was gathered in the backyard, plastic chairs in a circle, kids running around. My aunt asked me how therapy was going, and she sounded genuinely curious. I thought about it and answered honestly. I'm learning a lot, mostly about how I was never really allowed to have feelings in this family. The silence was instant. My mom narrowed her eyes the way she always does, like she's winding up for a takedown. And then came the laugh. That cold, defensive, dismissive laugh. "Oh, please," my mom said. "Don't start with that therapist nonsense again." I didn't flinch. "It's not nonsense. I just never felt heard." "You were heard," she snapped. "You just didn't like what we had to say." And just like that, the circle closed ranks. My cousin changed the subject. My aunt got up to check on the food. My brother muttered something about me, making everything about myself. I stood up. "I'm not trying to ruin anything. I just want to be honest about my experience." My dad chimed in from the porch. "This isn't the time or place." Of course it wasn't. It never is. I left and walked home, sat in the dark and cried harder than I had in months. Not because they didn't agree with me, but because they didn't even try to understand. No one texted me. No one checked in. I was ghosted by my own blood. Then came the group chat ambush. My mom sent a message to the whole family. "Can we all agree that family events should stay positive? Let's not bring personal grievances into shared spaces." I wasn't named, but I didn't need to be. My brother liked it with a thumbs up. My aunt commented a heart emoji. My dad added, "Well said." I stared at the screen and felt myself unravel. That was the day I realized. They didn't just ignore my voice, they actively worked to erase it. I decided to stop talking to them, not out of anger, but because I was tired of fighting to be misunderstood. The group chat stayed quiet after that, but my cousin posted a photo of the party on Instagram. The caption, "Some people ruin everything." The comments were brutal. I didn't reply. I just started journaling more, filling pages with things I'd never said out loud. I bought a cheap sketchbook from the dollar store and wrote on the backs of receipts, grocery lists, anything I could find. I just needed to get my feelings out every time I felt overwhelmed. One night, I posted an anonymous comment on Reddit, just one paragraph about what happened at the birthday party. The replies were instant. "I feel this so hard. Same thing happened with my mom. Thank you for putting it into words." That was the first time in a long time I felt less alone. I just needed to speak in places where people wanted to listen. Weeks later, my cousin texted, "Mom said you were dramatic again." I didn't even reply. I just muted the chat. A week later, I heard a knock at the door. Through the peephole, I saw someone I hadn't seen since the birthday party. They told me they needed to talk about the group chat with my family. I took a deep breath and opened the door. It was my cousin Melissa, not the one who posted that nasty Instagram caption. That was Jessica. Melissa was always the quieter one in the family. She stood there awkwardly in the hallway of my apartment building, shifting her weight from one foot to another. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice softer than I remembered. I hesitated. My apartment was my safe space now, the one place where no one could tell me my feelings weren't valid. But something in her expression made me step aside. I let her in and watched as she took in my small living room. The journals were scattered everywhere. I hadn't bothered to clean up. "Sorry about the mess," I mumbled, quickly stacking some papers together. Melissa sat down on my couch. "I saw what they've been saying in the group chat," she said. "It's not right." I froze. This wasn't what I expected. In our family, no one ever breaks ranks. No one ever admits when the group is wrong. I sat down across from her, still suspicious. "What do you mean?" I asked. "They've been planning something," she said, pulling out her phone. "Look." She showed me screenshots of a separate group chat I wasn't in. My mom, dad, brother, and aunts were all there. They were discussing me like I was a problem to be solved. My mom had written, "He needs to understand that his attitude is hurting everyone." My brother added, "Maybe if we all talk to him at once, he'll finally get it." My stomach dropped. They were planning an intervention. For me, because I dared to say I had feelings. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked Melissa. She put her phone away. "Because it's not fair. I felt the same way you do sometimes. No one listens in this family unless you're saying what they want to hear." I didn't know what to say. For years I thought I was alone in feeling this way. I got up and paced around my small apartment. The walls suddenly felt too close. "They want me to convince you to come to dinner at your parents' house on Friday," Melissa continued. "They're all going to be there. They think if they gang up on you, you'll snap out of it and go back to being quiet." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course they do. I told them I'd talk to you," she said, "but I wanted you to know the truth first." I stopped pacing. "Why? Why are you on my side suddenly?" Melissa looked down at her hands. "I started therapy too, 3 months ago, after my divorce. This was news to me. I didn't even know she was having marriage problems. No one in the family knows. I was too scared to tell them after seeing how they treated you." We sat in silence for a minute. I felt a weird mix of validation and sadness. Validation that someone else saw what I saw. Sadness that we both had to hide our attempts to get better. "So what now?" I asked. "I think you should go," she said, which surprised me. "But not alone. I'll be there too." And this time, we both speak up. I shook my head. "You don't know what you're asking. They'll turn on you too." "Maybe. she admitted. But I'm tired of pretending. Aren't you? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to hide in my apartment forever. But another part, the part that had been writing in journals and posting anonymously online, was screaming to be heard. Okay, I finally said, but we need a plan. We spent the next hour talking strategy. Melissa would pick me up so I wouldn't have to walk into the lion's den alone. We'd stick together. If they tried to talk over one of us, the other would redirect the conversation back. We'd use phrases from our therapy sessions like I feel statements that they couldn't easily dismiss. After Melissa left, I felt a strange mix of dread and hope. I called my therapist and scheduled an emergency session for the next day. I needed professional backup before facing my family again. The next few days passed in a blur. I practiced what I wanted to say. I wrote it down, rehearsed it in the mirror. I even recorded myself on my phone and played it back to hear how I sounded. My therapist suggested bringing a small object in my pocket that I could hold onto when I felt overwhelmed, a grounding technique. I chose a smooth stone I'd found at the beach last summer. Friday came too quickly. Melissa texted that she was outside my building. I took one last look in the mirror, grabbed my jacket, and headed downstairs. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys twice. Melissa was waiting in her car. She gave me a nervous smile as I got in. Ready? She asked. Not even close, I replied. But let's do this anyway. The drive to my parents' house was too short. We pulled up to the familiar driveway, and I saw all the cars already there. Everyone had arrived early, probably to get their stories straight. Remember, Melissa said as we walked to the door. We stick together. I nodded, clutching the stone in my pocket. My mom opened the door before we could knock. Her smile was too wide, too practiced. There you are, she exclaimed, as if the last few weeks of silence hadn't happened. Come in, come in. Everyone's waiting. I stepped into the house and immediately felt like I was 16 again. Small, voiceless. The living room was full. My dad in his usual armchair, my brother Ryan on the couch with his wife, my Aunt Barbara and Uncle Joseph. Even Jessica was there, the cousin who'd posted that nasty Instagram caption. They all looked up when I entered, their faces a mix of determination and fake smiles. Sit down, honey, my mom said, gesturing to an empty chair in the middle of the room. It was positioned so everyone could see me, like I was on display. I glanced at Melissa, who gave me a subtle nod. We had discussed this. They wanted to isolate me, make me feel alone. I took a deep breath. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I'll sit on the couch with Melissa. My mom's smile faltered for just a second. Oh, but we saved this spot for you. I know, I said, already moving toward the couch. But I'd prefer to sit here. It was a small act of defiance, but it felt huge. I sat down next to Melissa, who squeezed my hand quickly before letting go. My dad cleared his throat. Well, now that everyone's here, I think we should talk about what's been going on. And just like that, it began. The intervention they had planned. The ambush disguised as concern. I clutched the stone in my pocket and prepared for battle. I sat on the couch next to Melissa, feeling everyone's eyes on me. The living room was silent except for the ticking of that old grandfather clock my dad refused to get rid of. The heavy pendulum swung back and forth, marking each uncomfortable second. My mom brought in a tray of those store-bought cookies she always gets when she wants to pretend everything's normal. The ones with the thin layer of chocolate on top that never tastes quite right. No one touched them. We're worried about you, my dad started, using his reasonable voice, the one he used when he thought he was being the mature one in the room. He leaned forward in his leather recliner, the one no one else was allowed to sit in. This behavior isn't like you. I almost laughed. That was exactly the problem. The me they knew was the version who stayed quiet, who didn't cause trouble, who smiled through everything. The real me was someone they'd never bothered to know. What behavior exactly? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I felt Melissa shift slightly closer to me on the couch, her shoulder brushing mine in silent solidarity. My mom jumped in before my dad could answer. This attitude, these accusations, saying we never listened to you, posting things online for strangers to see. She was twisting the gold bracelet on her wrist, the way she always did when she was agitated. I froze. What are you talking about? Ryan, my brother, pulled out his phone. We know about your Reddit post, he said, looking smug. He was wearing that condescending smirk I'd grown to hate over the years. Jessica found it. Jessica, my Instagram caption writing cousin, nodded. It wasn't hard. You used the same username you use for everything. She flipped her perfectly highlighted hair over her shoulder, looking pleased with herself. I felt sick. I thought I'd been anonymous. I thought I'd found one safe place to express myself, but they'd been watching, hunting for anything they could use against me. I gripped the smooth stone in my pocket harder, running my thumb over its surface, a grounding technique my therapist had suggested. So you're stalking me now? I asked. Don't be dramatic, my Aunt Barbara said, rolling her eyes. She was perched on the edge of the armchair, her posture rigid as always. We're concerned. You're airing family business to strangers. I didn't use anyone's real names, I said. I just needed someone to talk to. You could talk to us, my mom said, her voice dripping with fake hurt. She pressed her hand to her chest for emphasis. We're your family. Melissa cleared her throat. Everyone turned to look at her, like they'd forgotten she was there. Maybe he tried, she said quietly. Maybe we weren't listening. The room went silent again. My mom's eyes narrowed at Melissa. This isn't about you, dear. The way she said dear made it sound like an insult. Actually, I said, finding my courage, it is about all of us, about how this family handles emotions, about how we talk to each other. My dad leaned forward in his chair. We didn't bring you here to lecture us. We brought you here because we're worried about your mental health. His knuckles were white where he gripped the armrests. And there it was, the trap. They weren't concerned about my feelings. They were concerned that I was expressing them at all. In their minds, that was the problem that needed fixing. My mental health is actually better since I started therapy, I said. Since I started being honest about how I feel. Therapy, my mom scoffed. That's where all this started, filling your head with ideas about how we failed you. She exchanged a knowing look with my Aunt Barbara. I took a deep breath, remembering what my therapist had taught me. I visualized a protective bubble around myself, keeping their words from penetrating too deeply. I'm not saying you failed me. I'm saying I needed something different than what I got. Like what? Ryan asked, his tone challenging. We gave you everything. A good home, college tuition, family vacations. What more did you want? He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. To be heard, I said simply. To have my feelings acknowledged instead of dismissed. My Uncle Joseph, who had been quiet until now, shook his head. Kids these days want participation trophies for their feelings too. He chuckled at his own joke, looking around for approval. I felt my face getting hot. This was exactly what I knew would happen. They weren't listening. They were just waiting for their turn to speak, to tell me why I was wrong. Melissa surprised me by speaking up again. I think what he's trying to say is valid, she said. Sometimes in this family, we're quick to tell people to get over things instead of acknowledging that they're hurt. My Aunt Barbara turned to Melissa with a cold stare. And when did you become an expert on family dynamics? Your marriage couldn't even last 3 years. The words hung in the air like poison. I saw Melissa flinch like she'd been slapped. The room got even quieter. That was another family tactic. When someone stepped out of line, bring up their biggest insecurity or failure. Make them too ashamed to keep talking. That's exactly what I'm talking about, I said, my voice stronger now. Instead of listening to what Melissa is saying, you attack her. You try to shame her into silence. No one is attacking anyone, my mom said, her voice artificially sweet. She smoothed her already perfect hair. We're just having a family discussion. This isn't a discussion, I countered. This is an ambush. You got me here under false pretenses. My dad frowned. What false pretenses? Melissa told you we wanted to talk. I looked at Melissa, who nodded slightly. Yes, but she also told me the truth about why. That this is an intervention to make me snap out of it and go back to being quiet. All eyes turned to Melissa. The betrayal on their faces would have been comical if it wasn't so predictable. In our family, loyalty meant keeping secrets, especially from the person being talked about. You showed him the group chat? Jessica asked, her voice rising. She clutched her phone tighter, as if afraid Melissa might grab it. Melissa nodded. I thought he deserved to know what he was walking into. My mom stood up suddenly. I need to check on dinner, she said, but everyone knew it was just an excuse to leave the room, her go-to move when things got uncomfortable. The sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floor punctuated her exit. As soon as she was gone, my dad leaned forward. Look, he said, his voice lower. Your mother is very upset by all this. You know how sensitive she is. I almost laughed at the irony. When I was sensitive, it was a character flaw. When my mom was sensitive, it was something everyone else needed to tiptoe around. I'm not trying to upset anyone, I said. I'm just trying to be honest about my experience growing up. Your experience, Ryan repeated, making air quotes with his fingers. What about our experience? Having to walk on eggshells around you because you might get offended by something? When have you ever walked on eggshells around me? I asked, genuinely confused. When have any of you ever held back from telling me exactly what you thought of me? The room fell silent again. I realized I had them there. They'd never hesitated to criticize me, to tell me to toughen up, to dismiss my feelings. My mom came back from the kitchen, her composure restored. Dinner's almost ready, she announced, as if nothing had happened. She had refreshed her lipstick, a bright coral that clashed with the tension in the room. Everyone started to get up, relieved for the distraction, but I stayed seated. I'm not done talking about this, I said. My mom's fake smile faltered. We can talk more after dinner, when everyone's had a chance to calm down. I am calm, I said. I'm probably the calmest person in this room right now. I just want to finish what we started. My dad sighed heavily. What exactly do you want from us? An apology? For what? For raising you the best we knew how? He ran his hand through his thinning hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen countless times. I shook my head. I don't want an apology. I just want acknowledgement. Recognition that my feelings are valid, even if you don't understand them. Fine, my dad said, throwing up his hands. Your feelings are valid. There. Can we eat now? The dismissiveness of it hit me like a physical blow. This was exactly what they always did. Say whatever they thought would end the conversation, without actually meaning it. That's not what I meant, I started, but my mom cut me off. Enough, she said sharply. We've indulged this long enough. Dinner is ready, and I won't let it get cold because you want to continue this therapy session. She spat out the word therapy like it tasted bad. I looked around the room, at my dad's impatient face, at Ryan's smirk, at Jessica's bored expression, at my aunt and uncle's discomfort, and finally, at Melissa, who looked torn between supporting me and not making waves. I stood up. I'm not hungry, I said. I think I'll head home. Don't be ridiculous, my mom said. You just got here. I came because I thought there was a chance you wanted to understand, I said. But this isn't about understanding. It's about getting me to stop talking. That's not true, my dad protested, but it was weak. It is true, I insisted, and I'm done pretending it isn't. I started walking toward the door. Melissa stood up too. I'll drive you, she said. My mom turned to her, eyes flashing. Sit down, Melissa. You've done enough. Melissa hesitated, looking between me and my mom. I saw the familiar fear in her eyes, the fear of being the next target, of being cut off, of being talked about in group chats she wasn't part of. It's okay, I told her. I can get an Uber. But Melissa surprised me. She squared her shoulders and grabbed her purse. No, I said I'd drive you and I will. The look on my mom's face was one I'd never seen before. Pure shock that someone was openly defying her. If you leave with him, she said to Melissa, don't bother coming to Sunday dinner next week. It was a classic move, the threat of exclusion, the ultimate family punishment. Melissa faltered for a moment, then seemed to make up her mind. I guess I'll have plans next Sunday then, she said, and walked toward me. We left together, ignoring the calls from behind us. My hands were shaking as I closed the front door behind us. We walked quickly to Melissa's car, not speaking until we were safely inside with the doors locked. I can't believe we just did that, Melissa said, her voice shaky. I can't believe you stood up to them, I replied. Thank you. She started the car. Where to? I thought for a moment. Can we just drive for a bit? I need to process. Melissa nodded and pulled away from the curb. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the weight of what had just happened settling over us. My phone started buzzing with texts. I turned it off without looking. They're going to be furious, Melissa said finally. I know, I replied. Are you okay with that? You didn't have to leave with me. She gripped the steering wheel tighter. I'm tired of being afraid of their disapproval. Do you know what my therapist told me? That families are supposed to be supportive, not just critical. I laughed softly. Mine said something similar, that healthy families make space for all emotions, not just the convenient ones. We ended up at a small diner a few miles from my parents' house. It was nearly empty, just a couple of truckers at the counter and an elderly couple in a booth. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of coffee and grease filled the air. We slid into a booth far from the door and ordered coffee. What happens now? Melissa asked after the waitress left. I shrugged. I don't know. I've never walked out before. Me neither, she admitted. It felt scary, but also good, like I finally did something for myself instead of to keep the peace. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. They'll try to bring us back in line, I said. They always do. How? She asked. First, they'll ignore us, act like we're being childish, and will come crawling back when we realize how silly we're being. Melissa nodded. And when that doesn't work, then come the flying monkeys, I said. They'll send other family members to talk to us, to tell us how hurt everyone is, how we're tearing the family apart. And if that doesn't work, then comes the love bombing. Sudden invitations, gifts, acting like nothing happened, waiting for us to let our guard down. Melissa looked impressed. You've really thought about this. I've had a lot of time to analyze their patterns, I said. My therapist helped me see the cycle. Our coffee arrived, and we both wrapped our hands around the warm mugs. The diner was quiet, except for the occasional clink of dishes and the low murmur of conversation from the other customers. I don't think I can go back to pretending, Melissa said after a while. Now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. I know, I agreed. It's like, once you realize you're allowed to have feelings, you can't go back to burying them. We sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, sipping our coffee. Then Melissa's phone started ringing. She pulled it out and showed me the screen. It was Jessica. Should I answer? She asked. I shrugged. Up to you, but put it on speaker if you do. Melissa took a deep breath and answered, putting the phone on the table between us. Hello? Where are you? Jessica demanded without preamble. Everyone's freaking out. I'm with my cousin, Melissa said simply. Having coffee. You need to come back, Jessica said. Both of you. This is ridiculous. Is it? Melissa asked. Because from where I'm sitting, what happened back there was pretty ridiculous. I could hear Jessica's frustrated sigh. Look, you've made your point. Everyone gets it. You're both upset. But walking out in the middle of a family dinner is just dramatic. It wasn't a family dinner, I said, leaning toward the phone. It was an intervention, designed to shut me up. There was a pause. We're worried about you, Jessica said, her voice softer now. Both of you. This therapy stuff is changing you. Maybe we needed to change, Melissa replied. Another pause. Aunt Karen is really upset, Jessica tried again. She's in the kitchen crying. The guilt trip. Right on schedule. I caught Melissa's eye and raised an eyebrow. She nodded slightly, understanding my silent message. I'm sorry she's upset, Melissa said, but I'm not coming back tonight. Fine, Jessica snapped, dropping the concerned act. But don't expect everyone to just forget this. You both made a scene and embarrassed the whole family. By leaving quietly? I asked. Interesting definition of scene. Whatever, Jessica said. Just know that you're the ones causing problems, not us. She hung up before we could respond. Melissa put her phone down and looked at me. That went about as expected. Yep, I agreed. Phase 1, make us the problem. We finished our coffee and ordered some food, realizing we were actually hungry after all. As we ate, we talked more openly than we ever had before. About our childhoods, about the family dynamics we'd always accepted as normal, but now recognized as unhealthy, about our therapists and what we were learning. I never knew you felt the same way, I told Melissa. I always thought I was the only one who didn't fit in. I got better at hiding it, she admitted. After seeing how they treated you when you spoke up, I learned to keep everything inside, until my marriage fell apart and I couldn't pretend anymore. By the time we finished eating, it was dark outside. Melissa drove me back to my apartment. We sat in her car for a moment before I got out. Thank you, I said again, for warning me, for standing with me. She smiled. We're going to need to stick together. They're going to try to divide us. I know, I said, but at least we're not alone anymore. I went upstairs to my apartment and turned my phone back on. It immediately exploded with notifications, texts from my parents, from Ryan, from various aunts and uncles, voicemails, even emails. I ignored them all and went straight to my journal. I needed to process everything that had happened. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. I checked the peephole, half expecting to see my mom or dad. Instead, it was Ryan. My brother rarely visited me. This had to be phase 2, the flying monkeys. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. What do you want, Ryan? He looked uncomfortable, standing in the hallway in his work clothes. Can I come in? Just for a minute? I hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered my apartment and looked around, taking in the journals and books scattered everywhere. Mom and Dad sent you, didn't they? I asked. He had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. They're worried. We all are. No, you're not, I said. You're annoyed that I'm not playing by the rules anymore. Ryan sighed and sat down on my couch without being invited. Look, I get that you're going through something, but did you have to drag Melissa into it? Aunt Barbara is really upset. I didn't drag Melissa anywhere, I said, remaining standing. She made her own choice. After you filled her head with all this therapy talk, he countered. I crossed my arms. Melissa has been in therapy for months. Did you know that? Did anyone in the family know that? Or care? Ryan looked surprised. No, why would she need therapy? Because her marriage ended. Because she was struggling. Because therapy helps people, Ryan. It's not some weird cult. He shifted uncomfortably. Whatever. The point is, you need to fix this. Mom barely slept last night. Dad's stress isn't good for his blood pressure. There it was. The guilt. The implication that their feelings were my responsibility. That their health depended on me staying silent. I'm not responsible for their reactions, I said, repeating what my therapist had told me countless times. They're adults. They can manage their own emotions. Ryan stood up, clearly frustrated. This isn't you. You were never this selfish before. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, I replied. And maybe this is the real me. The me that's been hiding because I was afraid of exactly this reaction. He walked to the door. Mom wants you to call her. She says you owe her an apology. I almost laughed. For what? For leaving a situation that was making me uncomfortable? For embarrassing her in front of the family, Ryan said, as if it was obvious. I'll think about it, I said, which was a lie. I had no intention of apologizing. After Ryan left, I called Melissa. She answered on the first ring. You too? She asked without preamble. Ryan just left, I confirmed. Let me guess. Jessica came to see you? Worse. My mom. She cried the whole time. Told me I was breaking her heart. I winced. I'm sorry. Don't be, Melissa said, sounding stronger than I expected. I held my ground, told her I needed space to figure things out. How did she take it? Not well, Melissa admitted. But I didn't back down. That's progress, right? Huge progress, I agreed. We talked for a few more minutes, making plans to meet up later in the week. After we hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for the family relationships that might never be the same. Fear of the continued fallout. But also pride. Pride that I had finally spoken my truth. Pride that I hadn't backed down. I opened my journal and started writing. About the intervention. About walking out. About finding an unexpected ally in Melissa. About Ryan's visit. Writing had become my way of processing, of making sense of the chaos, of finding my voice when the world tried to silence it. The next few days were a barrage of attempts to bring us back in line. My mom left tearful voicemails. My dad sent stern texts about family loyalty. Aunts and uncles I barely spoke to suddenly had opinions about my attitude problem. I saved everything but responded to nothing. Melissa and I met for coffee twice that week, comparing notes on the family's tactics. She was holding firm too, though it was clearly harder for her. She'd never been the family scapegoat before. She wasn't used to the pressure, the guilt trips, the manipulation. How do you stand it? She asked me during our second coffee date. The constant messages? The way they twist everything? I stirred my latte thoughtfully. I remind myself that their reactions prove my point. If they could handle honest communication, they wouldn't be freaking out like this. She nodded slowly. I never saw it before. How they make everything about their feelings. How they never actually listen. It's hard to see when you're in it, I said. It took me years of therapy to recognize the patterns. And now? She asked. What happens now? I shrugged. We keep holding our boundaries. We support each other. We build a life where we get to have feelings without apologizing for them. Melissa smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I like the sound of that. But the family wasn't done with us yet, not by a long poop. The next phase was about to begin, and it would test both of us in ways we couldn't imagine. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Melissa. Check your email, now. I grabbed my phone and opened my inbox. There it was, a message from my mom with the subject line, family meeting, mandatory. I clicked it open and felt my stomach drop. We're having a family gathering this Sunday at 2 p.m. Everyone is expected to attend. We need to address recent behaviors and find a path forward as a family. No excuses. The email was sent to the entire extended family. Everyone. Even cousins who lived out of state. I called Melissa immediately. Did you see it? I asked when she picked up. Yeah, classic power move, she replied. They're gathering the troops. I paced around my apartment. Are you going? There was a pause. I think we have to. If we don't show up, they'll use it against us forever. Remember when we tried to fix things and they wouldn't even come? She was right. In my family, not showing up was the ultimate sin. It gave them ammunition for years of guilt trips. Fine, I said, but we go together, and we have a plan. We spent the next few days preparing. We met at a coffee shop far from any family hangouts and made lists of what we wanted to say, what boundaries we needed to set. I even role-played with my therapist, practicing how to respond when they tried their usual tactics. Sunday came too quickly. Melissa picked me up an hour before the meeting. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Rough night? I asked as I got in her car. Barely slept, she admitted. My mom called 3 times trying to get me to come early. Said they needed to get our stories straight before everyone arrived. I snorted. At least they're being honest about coordinating against us. We drove to my parents' house in silence. There were already 8 cars parked outside when we arrived. I clutched my small notebook in my pocket where I'd written key phrases to remember. Melissa squeezed my arm as we walked up the driveway. Remember, we stick together, she whispered. I nodded. No matter what. The house was packed. Every chair, couch, and even some folding chairs had been brought in. My entire extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandparents who usually skipped family drama. My mom had gone all out with snacks and drinks, like this was a party instead of an ambush. When we walked in, the room went quiet. My mom rushed over, all smiles and hugs like nothing had happened. You're here. Come in. Come in. We saved seats for you. The seats were, of course, in the center of the room. Spotlight positions. I glanced at Melissa, who gave a slight shake of her head. We'd discussed this. We'll sit over there, I said, pointing to 2 empty spots on the edge of the room, near the door. A quick escape route if needed. My mom's smile tightened, but she didn't argue. We made our way to the seats, feeling everyone's eyes on us. I spotted Ryan in the corner, looking uncomfortable. Jessica was whispering to another cousin, both glancing our way. Once we sat down, my dad stood up. He cleared his throat in that important way he always did before making announcements. Thank you all for coming, he began. We've called this meeting because our family is facing some challenges. We've always been a close family, a strong family, but recently there have been some concerning behaviors that we need to address. I felt my face getting hot. They were talking about us like we were troubled teenagers, not grown adults with legitimate feelings. Before we start pointing fingers, my dad continued, I want to remind everyone that family comes first, always. We may disagree, we may have our issues, but at the end of the day, blood is thicker than water. Several people nodded. My Aunt Barbara dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, already getting emotional for the show. Now, my dad said, turning toward me and Melissa, I think we all know why we're here. There have been accusations made, feelings hurt, lines crossed, but today isn't about blame. It's about healing. I almost laughed. This wasn't about healing. This was about control, about getting us back in line. My mom stood up next to my dad. We love you both very much, she said, looking at me and Melissa with what she probably thought was a concerned expression. And we're worried. This therapy you're both doing, it seems to be driving a wedge between you and the family. That's not what's happening, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Therapy is helping us understand ourselves better, including how certain family dynamics have affected us. Family dynamics? My Uncle Joseph scoffed. You mean parenting? Are you saying your parents did a bad job? I took a deep breath. I'm saying that in this family, certain emotions aren't allowed, certain experiences aren't validated, and when someone tries to express those feelings, they're labeled as dramatic or oversensitive. The room erupted in protests, everyone talking over each other. My grandma saying something about kids these days. My cousin Jessica rolling her eyes dramatically. Melissa stood up. The room quieted, surprised. Melissa rarely spoke up in family gatherings. It's happening right now, she said, her voice shaking slightly. We're trying to express how we feel, and you're all jumping in to tell us we're wrong to feel that way. No one's saying your feelings aren't valid, my Aunt Barbara said in that condescending tone she used with children. We're just saying you're being a bit sensitive. I stood up next to Melissa. That's exactly what we're talking about. Dismissing our feelings as being sensitive instead of actually listening. My mom stepped forward, hands out in a placating gesture. We're listening now. That's why we're all here. I looked around the room, at all the faces of people who'd known me my whole life but never really seen me, never really heard me. Are you listening? I asked. Or are you waiting for your turn to tell us why we're wrong? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. My dad broke it. We've always supported you, both of you. We've always been there. And this is how you repay us? By attacking us? By walking out of family dinners? By turning against your own blood? And there it was, the real issue. Not that we were hurt, but that we weren't playing by their rules anymore. We're not attacking anyone, Melissa said. We're just asking for our feelings to be respected. My brother Ryan, who had been quiet until now, stood up. Look, I think everyone needs to calm down. Maybe we should take a break, have some food, and come back to this when emotions aren't so elevated. Classic Ryan, always trying to smooth things over without actually addressing the problem. No, I said firmly. We're not going to eat cookies and pretend everything's fine. That's what we've always done, and it's not working anymore. I pulled out my notebook. I've made a list of boundaries I need going forward, things that would make me feel safe and respected in this family. My mom's eyes widened. Boundaries? We're your family. There aren't supposed to be boundaries in family. That's exactly the problem, I replied. Everyone needs boundaries, even in families, especially in families. I opened my notebook and started reading. 1. I need my feelings to be acknowledged, even if you don't agree with them. 2. No more dismissive comments like, you're too sensitive or stop being dramatic. 3. No talking about me in group chats I'm not part of. With each item, I saw faces in the room harden. By the time I finished my list of 10 boundaries, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Anything else? My dad asked sarcastically. Yes, Melissa said, surprising me again. She pulled out her own list. I have boundaries too. She read hers. They were similar to mine, with a few additions specific to her situation. When she finished, the room was dead silent. Then my grandpa, who rarely spoke at these gatherings, cleared his throat. In my day, we didn't need all these rules to be a family. We just respected each other. That's all we're asking for, I said. Respect. My mom shook her head. This isn't respect. This is conditions. Family is unconditional. Exactly, I replied. So why are there conditions on me expressing my feelings? Why is family only unconditional when it's convenient for you? That hit a nerve. I could see it in her face. For just a second, something like understanding flashed in her eyes, but then it was gone, replaced by the familiar defensiveness. I think we've heard enough, my dad said. It's clear that therapy has given you both some interesting ideas about family, but at some point you need to decide what's more important, these new ideas or the people who have loved you your whole lives. And there it was, the ultimatum. Choose us or choose yourself. I looked at Melissa. She nodded slightly. That's a false choice, I said. I can take care of my emotional health and be part of this family, but it has to be a family that respects boundaries. And if we don't agree to these boundaries, my Aunt Barbara asked, then I'll need to limit my contact, I said simply. I'll still love you, but I need to protect myself too. The room exploded again, everyone talking at once, accusations flying, my mom crying dramatically, my dad red-faced and angry. In the chaos, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my cousin Taylor, who had been quiet the whole time. I get it, she whispered. I've been in therapy too. I stared at her in surprise. Another ally I never knew I had. Melissa and I stood our ground as the family meeting devolved into exactly what we expected. People talking over us, dismissing us, trying to guilt us. After an hour of this, I'd had enough. We've said what we needed to say, I announced, raising my voice to be heard over the din. You all know where we stand. The ball is in your court now. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Melissa followed. To my surprise, so did Taylor. And then, even more surprisingly, my brother Ryan. Outside, the four of us stood in the driveway, a little shell-shocked. That was intense, Taylor said. Ryan ran his hand through his hair. I had no idea you felt that way. About growing up. About not being heard. I looked at him. Really looked at him. How could you know? We never talked about it. Not really. I want to, he said. Talk about it, I mean. Not now, but soon, I nodded, too surprised to say more. The four of us exchanged numbers and promised to meet for coffee later that week. As Melissa and I drove away, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. Not that my entire family would suddenly change, but that maybe, just maybe, some connections could be rebuilt on healthier terms. Over the next few weeks, things unfolded pretty much as expected. My parents cycled between angry messages, guilt-tripping texts, and stony silence, but I held firm to my boundaries. I didn't respond to manipulative messages. I didn't engage in circular arguments. I simply repeated my needs and let them decide if they could meet them. Melissa did the same. We supported each other through the hard days, the days when it would have been easier to just give in and go back to the old patterns. Taylor, Ryan, and a few other cousins started meeting us regularly for coffee or dinner. A small faction of the family who were tired of the old dynamics, who wanted something healthier. My mom eventually called, 3 weeks after the family meeting. She didn't apologize exactly, but she did say she'd been thinking about what I said. It was a start, a small one, but still a start. Not everyone came around. Some family members doubled down, convinced we were the problem. My Aunt Barbara still makes passive-aggressive comments on social media. Jessica still rolls her eyes when I talk about therapy. My dad still changes the subject when emotions come up, but I'm okay with that. I've learned that I can't control how others respond. I can only control how I show up, what I accept, and what boundaries I maintain. 6 months after that first confrontation at my cousin's birthday party, Melissa and I started a small support group. Just a few people meeting in my apartment once a month, talking about family dynamics and emotional health. Taylor joined, then Ryan, then a couple of friends who had similar family issues. I still post on Reddit sometimes, still journal almost every day, still work with my therapist on untangling years of conditioning. The journey isn't over. There are still hard days, still family events that leave me drained, still moments when I doubt myself. But I'm not invisible anymore. I have a voice now, and people who actually want to hear it. That's enough. That's everything.